So at IAPA, Big Bear Mountain Coaster's layout was revealed. While it has already been announced, the only thing we had was off-ride and a little bit of on-ride, so there wasn't much to analyze other than the decision for Dollywood. Now, we have a full POV, and I'm ready more than anyone to analyze it. I, just like in my Wildcats Revenge analysis, will be going in order of the elements after I list the stats. This coaster is 66 feet tall, has 3 launches, 48 miles per hour, and just under 4,000 feet of track. Okay, on to the first element. Right here I'm 99% sure this is coming out of the station launch as seen in the original animation. Coming out of that though is a turn that looks to have some flowjector. It could be similar to a wave turn. Well, brace yourself after that for another launch, and this time it's rolling, and this doesn't look like the ride's most powerful launch. It looks pretty, well, alright. It gets the ride up to speed in order to navigate through the long series of turns along the terrain. This leads us into a wave turn type element. Wave turns that give ejector are usually on an arch path, so I don't know if this will hit like Iron Glazzies. Then the coaster will move into an elevated bank turn. Bank turns are probably some of the most useless elements out there, so this doesn't excite me one bit. Then the coaster goes through a variation of a switchback seen on Velocicoaster. Like, it's not a true switchback, because there is an airtime pop between the two turns. Then the coaster goes through a low to the ground turn. This seems like it would be faster than shown on screen, because there is a fairly steep incline during the turn. We just don't know yet. Then there looks to be a much tamer version of one of those stangle dives on Maverick. I know some people might be excited for this element, but there is almost no speed coming into this element, so it's just not going to be too intense. It's possible it could give some floater the way it's profiled. Then we have another one of these switchback variations, except this time it turns and dives off the hill. I just love when parks use their terrain to their advantage. I tell you, it makes the coaster 10 times better in my opinion. Then the coaster uses the speed to fly through a little rock-themed tunnel into a nice speed hill. All speed hills are awesome, and I don't expect anything different with this one. Then the coaster navigates through a bank turn that gets the coaster back onto the hill. Then the coaster goes through another one of those switchback variations, except this time it's less of a switchback. The coaster seems to straighten out a tiny bit before the element, and this could make that small pop of airtime turn into a large pop of ejector. Then, like usual, there's a turn. Ironically, there's actually kind of a repeat of this element right after. However, this element actually has more speed coming into it since the turn goes around the hill instead of up the hill. This could be a very strong element. Or maybe I'm too hopeful, and all of these switchback variations do nothing. Well, the next element is a true switchback. It doesn't seem too drawn out, so I just don't see the switchback being intense. Then there's probably the fifth one of these switchback variations. They're repetitive on Big Bear Mountain, but they look to be good, like I said before. After the turn, the coaster straightens out before more of a straight airtime hill. What I like about this is it doesn't lose speed going up like, say, Camelback. It's a single down, I guess. The next hill is more like a traditional hill. I wouldn't say it's a speed hill, but it's definitely not a Camelback. After this, the coaster rises into the third launch of the ride. This looked decent. You have a little speed going into it, so the coaster would have to accelerate pretty fast to get to its top speed. With this speed, the coaster rises into a mini switchback. I call it mini because you probably go 20 inches to the right before snapping down to the left. This looks kind of like that triangle turn on Nitro, so it's probably a mid element. Then the coaster uses the dive maneuver for another switchback variation. The turn of this element leads into another weak stangle dive. Like I said, probably nothing but weak floater. This leads the coaster into a mix of an S-bend and a switchback. I'm not really sure which one. Then the coaster dives off a 10 feet tall hill and then rises back up into a twisted airtime hill. Then there's another little turn into probably now the 10th of the same switchback variation. Then the coaster goes through a little speed hill into a little double down. This looks awesome. I mean, all double downs are great. Then the coaster goes through a classic switchback into an intense upwards helix. I mean, I don't know if it's intense, it just looks that way. Then there looks to be another switchback variation. Then the coaster dives into a tunnel that rises into the brakes. While not being the greatest, most intense coaster ever, Big Bear Mountain Coaster looks to have a fun terrain layout that I can't wait to experience. Is the decision good? Yeah, it fills the launch gap and puts a little intensity into Wildwood Grove. Well, I will hopefully see you later.